Before you skip, ask yourself this. What would you do if curse followed you with glowing red eyes and deadly hiss? In this story, a powerful merchant dares to defy ancient spirits and pays the ultimate price. Stay with me, because the twist ahead will leave you questioning fate, greed, and the terrifying power of unseen. In a small village at the heart of Africa's savanna, an ancient tale is passed down from generation to generation. A story of betrayal, a deadly curse, and a snake that became omen of death. It begins with a powerful merchant, Kwaku, known for his riches and cunning, who has long been a figure of both reverence and fear. He made his fortune by exploiting the village's resources and forming unholy alliances with corrupt outsiders. However, Kwaku's greed leads him to an inevitable downfall. My dear friends, this story is just getting started. There is danger, mystery, and a deadly curse ahead. Stick with me till the end. You won't want to miss a single twist. Kwaku, a man whose name had been whispered in awe and fear, sat in the heart of his grand compound, surrounded by treasures from all corners of the world. His wealth was unrivaled: gold from the coastal kingdoms, ivory from the great elephants of the savannah, and spices from the distant lands of the east. Yet, despite the riches that flowed into his hands like a never-ending river, Kwaku was never satisfied. His ambitions stretched far beyond what his wealth could buy. He had begun to see the village as nothing more than a source of income. The elders who had once looked upon him with favor were now nothing more than pawns in his game. Their warning fell on deaf ears as Kwaku, intoxicated by power, manipulated and deceived the villagers. He knew their land held treasures hidden within the earth, and he was determined to take every last drop. His dealings with outsiders were less than honorable. Kwaku had become an expert in making deals with foreigners, rich traders, corrupt landowners, and those who had no respect for the sacred land. In exchange for gold and promise of the better future, Kwaku had given them access to the village's ancestral grounds. The elders had tried to stop him, but Kwaku's influence had already spread like poison. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the village, Baba Kufi, the village elder, gathered the council of elders beneath the ancient baobab tree. Baba Kufi's face was grave, his wrinkled hands shaking as he held the carved staff passed down through generations. His voice was heavy with sorrow. "Kwaku," Baba Kufi began, his deep voice carrying through the gathering, "you have desecrated the land. You have taken more than what the earth can give. The spirits are angry. If you do not turn back, there will be a price to pay." But Kwaku, who had been drinking in the riches of his own successes, only laughed. "Spirits?" he scoffed. "I control my destiny, not some ghost from the past. Your warnings are nothing but superstition. The world is changing, and I will change with it." The elder, knowing the severity of his action, fell silent, and Baba Kufi stood with a heavy heart. "You will see," he muttered as he walked away, the weight of his words settling over the gathering like a dark cloud. That night, as the stars glittered above, an old man appeared at Kwaku's doorstep. His clothes were tattered, his face weathered by time, but there was something about him that commanded attention. He held a wooden staff, etched with strange symbols, and his eyes glimmered with an ancient wisdom. Kwaku, ever the skeptic, eyed the old man with disdain. "I know who you are. the old man said, his voice raspy. "You are the one who has angered the spirits. You have sealed your fate." "I have sealed my fate?" Kwaku sneered. "Who are you to tell me such a nonsense?" The old man did not flinch. "I am the messenger of the spirits," he said, "and they are angry. You will pay for your greed." Without another word, the old man turned and walked away. But before he disappeared into the midnight, he muttered one final warning: "The Black Mamba will find you." At first, Kwaku paid little attention to the old man's words. But as days passed, strange things began to happen. The village, once vibrant with life, began to change. The once peaceful animals of the savannah began acting strangely. They roamed in erratic patterns, their eyes wide with fear, as they sensed something that villagers could not see. Kwaku, however, was too busy with his trade to notice that subtle signs of unrest. He spent his days in his lavish home, making deals with traders, and his nights were filled with feasts and celebrations. But each morning when he rose, he could not shake the feeling of unease that had settled in his chest. He had nightmares, vivid and terrifying, of a giant black mamba slithering through the tall grasses, its eyes burning with an unnatural fire. The snake seemed to follow him in every dream, his tongue flicking, its hiss filling the air with a sense of dread. Then came the first sign of the cursed arrival. One evening, Kwaku walked home from the village market, his mind occupied with thoughts of a new trade deal he had struck with a distant foreign merchant. As he passed through the dense underbrush on the outskirts of the village, he saw something that made his blood run cold. A black mamba, larger than any he had ever seen, crossed his path. Its scales glistened in moonlight, each one sharp and menacing. But it was the snake's eyes that made Kwaku's heart stop. They glowed bright red, as though they were burning with an otherworldly fire. Kwaku froze, unable to move. The snake, as if sensing his fear, paused before him. Its tongue flicked in and out, tasting the air, and Kwaku's legs felt like they might give way. But just as suddenly as it had appeared, the black mamba slithered away into the darkness, disappearing into the underbrush. Kwaku stood there for a long moment, his breath shallow, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never felt fear like that before. The black mamba was not a normal snake. There was something supernatural about it, something that chilled him to his core. That night, Kwaku could not sleep. The image of the snake's eyes haunted him, and he found himself rapidly walking in the middle of the night, drenching in sweat. He couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was coming, but he dismissed it as a mere nightmare, a figment of his imagination. But he was wrong. The following days were marked by an unsettling silence. The once lively village, with its chatter and laughter, seems to be holding its breath. The animals, once abundant, had become increasingly scarce, and those that remained were agitated and erratic. It wasn't long before the first death struck. It was Mansa, a young woman who had worked for Kwaku, helping him manage his trade operations. One morning, her body was found in the fields, her lifeless eyes wide with terror. There were no visible wounds, but around her neck there were strange markings, deep, bruised impressions, as though something had strangled her. The village was in shock, but what was more terrifying was that this was not an isolated incident. Over the next few weeks, several more villagers were found dead under similar mysterious circumstances. Each victim had a strange marking on their body, and each seemed to have died in their sleep, their faces frozen in fear. It didn't take long for the villagers to whisper in fear. The curse of the Black Mamba had arrived. Kwaku was shaken. He had been warned. He had seen the snake, and now it was clear. The curse had begun to take its toll. The village was on the brink of collapse, and Kwaku, once so confident and proud, was gripped with panic. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the Mamba's glowing eyes, watching him from darkness. In his desperation, he turned to Baba Kufi, hoping that the elder might have a solution. The fear in the village had reached a fever pitch. People were afraid to leave their homes, and the market had grown silent. The air was thick with tension, and even the once caring villagers now cast wary glances at one another, as though they too feared the unseen presence that stalked them. Kwaku, desperate for a solution, sought out Koabena, a renowned hunter from a neighboring village who was known for his skill in tracking and killing dangerous creatures. Kwaku promised him a large sum of gold in exchange for helping him rid the village of the Black Mamba. The hunter, a tall and muscular man with a fierce reputation, agreed to help, but only on one condition: that Kwaku would offer a great sacrifice to the spirits of the land to appease them. "Greed is what brought the curse upon you," Koabena said. "Until you give something of a great value, you will never be free of the snake." Kwaku, desperate to break the curse, agreed to the terms, and so, with Koabena leading the way, they set off into the jungle, determined to find and kill the Black Mamba. As they ventured deeper into the dense jungle, the atmosphere grew tense. The air was thick with humidity, and the sounds of jungle were eerily absent. Kwaku, whose confidence had once been unshakable, felt the weight of the jungle press against him. Every rustle of the leaves, every crack of branch made his heart race. It was as if the jungle itself was watching them. They walked for hours, and just as they were about to lose hope, they entered a clearing. There, coiled around the trunk of a massive baobab tree, was the Black Mamba. Its body was thick and muscular, its scales as a glossy black that shimmered in the dim light. Koabena motioned for the Kwaku to stay back as he raised his spear. But as he moved forward to strike, the snake moved faster than Kwaku could comprehend, disappearing into the dense underbrush with terrifying speed. "I've never seen a snake move that fast," Koabena said, his voice filled with unease. "This is no ordinary creature." Kwaku realized that the Black Mamba was not just a snake. It was a manifestation of the curse, a deadly omen that would not be so easily defeated. Days passed and the village continued to suffer. Kwaku, his mind unraveling, spent a sleepless night pacing the halls of his mansion. He had sacrificed his wealth, yet the snake still haunted his dreams. More villagers died, some by snakebite, others by strange and unexplained circumstances. The village was dying, and with it so was Kwaku's mind. In his final moments of clarity, Kwaku turned to Baba Kufi for guidance. The elder, now resigned to the fact that the curse could not be avoided, spoke solemnly. "There is only one way to end this, by giving up everything that brought you to this point. You must give up everything. Kwaku, your wealth, your power, your greed. Only then can you appease the spirits." Kwaku, now a shadow of the man he once was, agreed. He gathered his gold, ivory, and other treasures and placed them in the center of the village. He set them ablaze, hoping that the smoke would carry his sacrifice to the spirits. As the fire blazed, the earth trembled, and a shadow fell over the village. The black mamba emerged from the smoke, its eyes burning with rage. It was no longer just a creature. It was the manifestation of Kwaku's own greed, a creature that could not be defeated by simple acts of violence. Kwaku, in his final moment, faced the mamba. His body was paralyzed with fear, and before he could speak, the snake struck. The venom coursed through his veins, and the last thing Kwaku saw was the fiery glow in the mamba's eyes as it swallowed him whole. Years later, the village was abandoned. The land, once fertile, had become barren. The story of Kwaku, the merchant who had brought death to his people with his greed, was passed down from generation to generation. His name became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the price of dishonoring the spirits of the land. And whenever a black mamba was seen slithering through the savannah, the villagers would remember the curse of Kwaku and the price that had been paid.